Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we're going to continue our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game, and today we have reached EX Holon Phantoms. Yeah, we're still in the Holon region apparently, which is very, very cool. Now, this set was released in Japan on the 27th of January 2006, following not that much later in English on May the 3rd, 2006. So we didn't have a huge amount of time to wait. We were back to sensible gaps between sets. Now, this was still set in Holon, but it was set a little bit south of the city from EX Delta species, which, according to the lovely folks over at Bulbapedia, good website for a little bit of research, means that it's a more natural environment, which led to fewer dual types. Now, don't get me wrong, we still had some of the Holos. Flygon, for instance, came in as a dual grass metal type, but we had a bunch of them coming along like Blossom just as a water type. So we still had some dual types, but we had fewer of them and more mono types. We also saw with this set our final box topper. I mean, as I record this in July 2020 with Darkness Ablaze on the horizon, the last box topper we've seen so far. There was a secret rare Mew, which you got as a little box topper. If you bought a box of the set, you would get that in there. And this was the last time we saw this. Now, maybe you're listening several years in the future and box toppers are back, but for now, ladies and gentlemen, they gone. Now, there was also a pre-release promo which was Executor, but what was very, very cool here was there was actually a pre-release deck box as well. If you went along to a pre-release, not only would you get your Executor promo, you'd get yourself a lovely deck box. Shout out to Chaos Cards for the images of this one. Now, I must apologise, these actually started in the previous set Legend Maker. Shout out to Troll and Toad for this image. And there was one in that set. Now, I believe, and correct me in the comments if I'm mistaken about this, I couldn't find any earlier pre-release deck boxes. I believe they started in Legend Maker. My apologies, I did not mention this last week. But there was one here. It wasn't the last time they'd ever do pre-release deck boxes. They came back with a vengeance several years down the line. But it was very, very cool that we would get one in this particular set. Speaking of cool, you could get yourself a non-holo Mew in Lucario and the Mystery of Mew as a DVD exclusive. And what was very cool here was it was actually the secret rare box topper Mew, just as a non-holo, as long as you went and bought yourself a copy of the DVD. And I cannot be the only one that misses DVD exclusive promo cards, except we did get one in Detective Pikachu literally last year, so maybe they're not gone after all. Now, one of the coolest things about this set, one of the things that a lot of people remember, was the Holo Energy. All of the 6 main types of basic energy got a lovely holo print here, and although they're not my personal favourite, several people out there will really go to task defending this as the best energy out there. As always, it's a matter of personal preference, but these were some very, very cool energy. And they can generally be picked up for somewhere in the region of $5 to $10 nowadays, so you can still get your hand on these without breaking the bank too much. Then again, if you're paying $5 to $10 and you need 10 for your deck, still not going to be the cheapest thing ever, but they were very, very cool. Now, in terms of EXs, there really weren't very many here. We only had 3, which made it the same number as EX Delta species when they just gave us the EVs. So, in this particular set, we found ourselves with a Crawdaunt, which did see a little bit of play here and there. It was a fun little tech. A second Mew EX, and bearing in mind that it has not been long since we had the other Mew, or to put it another way, it was literally the set after we got the other Mew. We literally had like a 1 set gap between both the Mew EXs, which some people might argue is maybe a tad excessive. What I'll say is the other Mew was a lot better. Not that this one didn't see play, but that the other Mew was infinitely better. And we got Mightyena EX, and in all my research I did for this set, I did not find anyone playing Mightyena. Sorry. Now, we also had 3 Pokemon stars, including Gyarados Star, which is interesting as actually being a Delta Pokemon star. We had not seen one up to this point, so a Fire-type Gyarados Star, very cool. We also saw Mewtwo Star and Pikachu Star, and although neither of them were particularly playable, you're talking about stars of some of the most popular Pokemon we've seen. I think it is fair to say that these are fairly well sought after. And this would be a good time to veer into talking about the most expensive cards in the set. They were these 3 Pokemon stars. Now, trying to find some kind of value on these was extremely difficult, but you're talking somewhere in the region of $400 for a mint condition version. But please bear in mind it varies quite wildly. You could pay a fair bit less or a fair bit more. Moving out of these, the most expensive card was your Mew EX. That would come in at about $70. It might not have been as playable as the other Mew, but it's still Mew EX. It's still a very sought after card. Now, taking a little bit of a look at the theme decks, we had to, like we tend to, Fire Mist and Flood Rush. Fire Mist being a fire fighting deck based around Latte Ass Delta, and you did get yourself a holo version of Latte Ass here, and then you got yourself non-holo versions of Blaziken and Nosepass. And given that I've told you that Fire Mist is based around Latias, you can probably guess that Flood Rush is based around Latios. It is a water psychic deck with a holo Latias Delta, and you get yourself non-holo versions of Blossom Delta and Zangoose. Cool. Now, this was not a powerhouse set competitively. It really did not give rise to many decks. Really, there was only one good deck that came out of this set specifically, but there were a few cards that we can have a little bit of a look at. Holon's Cast Form. Now, on the one hand, this was basically the same as the Electrode and Magneton, in that you could attach it from your hand to one of your Pokemon with an energy attached, and it counts as 2 energy, but you need to return an energy card from that Pokemon to your hand. But of course, what you would do is you would use stuff like Blastoise that could accelerate extra energy, and then it really wouldn't be a big deal when you were removing an energy to whack this one on. But here's the thing. Above and beyond those others, it actually did have a really, really nice attack as well. For 1 colorless energy, you counted the number of Pokemon you had in play with Delta on the card, and you drew up to that many cards. So if you were using a very Delta heavy deck here, you could actually really get a good bit of draw going on here. Not saying it was perfect, I'm saying that it was a very, very nice option in a bunch of decks. Raichu was one of the best cards in the set, the Delta, not the regular. There was a regular Raichu, that one was not good. But the Delta Raichu had the attack Zap. For 1 colorless energy, you did 20 damage to each Pokemon that has any Poke Powers or Poke Bodies, and that was both yours and your opponent's. But the cool thing here was, you could just play none, and then you'd be doing damage to everything. And we need to remind ourselves about Scramble Energy at this stage. Because you see, Scramble Energy was a very nice card. It could only be attached to an evolved non-EX Pokemon. But if you had more prize cards remaining than your opponent, it went from being 1 colorless energy to any free energy. So one of the things we would do at the time was try not to go ahead on prizes, because we would activate our opponent's Scramble Energy. And one of the cool things about Raichu was you could sit there spreading, kind of forcing your opponent to activate your own Scramble Energy, because if they didn't, you could just sit there spreading damage to all of their Pokemon. Also, free energy, 50 damage, but if you discard 2 metal, you do 90. Yeah, that was a pretty gosh darned good attack as well. And Raichu's partner in crime tended to be Executor. And fighting was a good type to have at the time, but for 2 energy you did 10 damage plus 10 more for each Pokemon you have in play with Delta on its card. That is 70 damage for a full board of Delta Pokemon. And for free energy, 30 to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon. So again, you're getting some decent spreading going on there with Executor as well. So both of them can spread, both of them can do decent damage. That sounds pretty nice to me. Now, Pidgeot was a fun one. Largely played for the Pokemon Delta Reserve that said as long as Pidgeot had any of the Holon energy cards attached to it, each player's Pokemon, other than Delta Pokemon, cannot use any Poke Powers. So again, if you're playing a bit of a Delta deck, or you just want a way to counter Poke Powers, this would be there. And what was really cool here was that this was actually a really good counter to Pidgeot that everybody was still absolutely playing because it could search any card from your deck and was a little bit ridiculously over the top good. Now, they were the good cards in the set. They were the ones that saw a lot of play, and you'll notice there was only 4 Pokemon there. But there were a few others that did quite well, and you might be able to count Flygon in the former category here. Flygon was a very, very good card. Flygon came along with the Poke Power Delta supply. Once during your turn, you may attach a basic energy card or a Delta Rainbow energy card, more on that in a minute, from your hand to one of your Delta Pokemon. Free energy 60 damage goes through anything was fine, but it was played here for the extra energy acceleration. And this did actually feature in the Flyvies deck that won the Junior World Championships in 2007, so this was a very nice card, albeit not finding its way into too many decks. Now, Mewtwo Delta was a fun one. It had the attack Psychic Arrays, let you choose one of the defending Pokemon's attacks, and they weren't allowed to use it next turn. And this was a good candidate for Mew EX, gave you an option to essentially turn off a Pokemon if they only had one good attack. Though it also did 40 damage and went through anything for free energy, and sometimes your opponent's blocking you, having an attack that can go through anything, pretty gosh darn nice. Now, Baby Daisy would be pleased because, well, there were actually 2 Latte Ass in the set. One of them was not good, the other one really was. It had the Pokeball Dual Aura. As long as you have either Latios or Latios EX in play, each player's evolved non-EX Pokemon cannot use any Pokebodies. And sure, EXs and basics got around it, but still very, very nice. Now, you could play that with the Latios from Holon Phantoms, which interestingly enough had the same Pokebody, as long as you had Latte Ass or Latte Ass EX in play. Each player's evolved Pokemon cannot use any Pokebodies, which is a bit weird. However, this was generally played a little bit more with Latios EX that would come around a little bit later in Dragon Frontiers. This gave free retreat to each of your Latias, Latios EX, Latios, and Latios EX. But it also, for 2 energy, did 30 damage and prevented all effective attacks, including damage, done to Latios EX by your opponent's Pokemon EX during your opponent's next turn. So you could also lock EXs out of the game, which was kind of fun. That was probably the better option. Now, Chime Echo was a very nice one here. It had the Poke Power Delta support. Once during your turn, if you have a supporter card with Holon in its name in play. Quick side note here, at this stage you didn't play supporters and discard them. You would play them and they would sit next to your active Pokemon, supporting them, and be discarded at the end of the turn. Not the way it works nowadays, but is the way it worked back then. It allowed you to search your discard pile for a basic energy or a Delta Rainbow energy card. And of course, this was a phenomenal combo with Flygon that would then let you attach that energy you just went and searched for. Kingdra Delta was a nice little card, did see a bit of play as a nice little rogue deck. It was both fire and metal type, and it had the Poke Power Dragon Curse. If it was your active Pokemon, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon Delta. And then if you were attacking an EX, you did 60 damage for 2 energy. It was a fun little rogue deck that was nice at countering a lot of the decks out there. It wasn't a powerhouse deck. And we could mention Crawdaunt here. Again, that did see a bit of play splashed into a few decks here and there. Get it? Because it's a water Pokemon. Once during your turn, if your opponent has 4 or more bench Pokemon, you could basically make your opponent put that card into their hand. And you did 20 damage for each energy attached to Crawdaunt EX. Clearly, this was a very nice combo with Blastoise EX that would allow you to attach as much energy during your turn as you liked, as long as it was water energy. So yeah, not a powerhouse card, not a staple in every deck, but it did see a bit of play here and there. It did get teched into some LBS decks, for instance, so something I think that was worth pointing out. Now, in terms of trainer cards, there really wasn't much at all, but we did see Holon Adventurer. Now, this fit into the Holon engine that we talked about a couple of sets ago, and essentially, you would use Holon Transceiver to search it out, and this was just quite a nice draw card. It let you discard a card from your hand to draw 3 cards, but if you discarded a Pokemon Delta, you would draw 4 cards instead, which was really nice at the time. And basically, it was just in all the Holon decks. All these decks that we use in the Holon engine here did use Holon Adventurer. It was a very good card. And I've already mentioned Delta Rainbow a couple of times. This did see play in some of these Delta decks, and it really was just Rainbow energy, but you didn't take a damage counter when you attached it, but it only worked on Delta Pokemon, hence the whole Delta Rainbow energy. But if you were playing a Delta deck, it was very, very nice. And do bear in mind that it could be searched out very easily using stuff like Chime Echo. And then it could be attached very easily using stuff like Flygon. So it very much had its uses. Now, in terms of the best decks, there really was only one deck that came out of this set that was really, really good. And it was Raichu Eggs. Now, Raichu Eggs actually went 14-0 at the US National Championships. It went completely undefeated to win. And not for nothing, it actually beat the mirror match in the final. So it came first and second, with the winner going completely undefeated. I mean, that is a pretty powerhouse deck. Though it wasn't quite so good when it got to Worlds, etc. People were ready for it. And it's just what we talked about before. You had your Raichu that would spread damage and then come in hitting big when it could. And you had your Executor, which would come along. I mean, again, hitting a couple of weaknesses is nice, but you could do 30 damage to 2 Pokemon, or you could do kind of 70 damage with Delta Circle. Plus, as previously mentioned, you basically forced your opponent into activating Scramble Energy. And you can kind of see where this came from here. It was a very, very nice, powerful deck, and it did do extremely well. Also, because you're anti-Poke Powers here, clearly you would be going for Curse Stone, which put 1 damage counter on each Pokemon with a Poke Power between turns. I mean, that's mean, admittedly, but very much a no-brainer here. It was a really nice option, quite frankly. Now, the other deck I need to give a shout out to PTCG Archive for. I don't think it was the best deck ever, but they alerted me to a Kingdra Pidgeot deck that did go and get top 16 at the US National Championships. Now, this was very much a rogue deck, an under-the-radar deck. Top 16 at US Nationals is good, but doesn't really point it out as one of the best decks in the format. But there was literally one deck that came out of this set, so, you know, I wanted to give this one a bit of a mention. Now, you had the aforementioned Kingdra, which dropped damage counter onto Pokemon Delta and did decent damage to Pokemon EX. Bearing in mind you're talking low energy cost, single prize Pokemon, etc. And don't forget we had the Kingdra from Team Rocket Returns, which would take away your weakness, which was kind of nice. That was a handy little bonus. And you would then use Pidgeot to turn off your opponent's Poke Powers, but it would leave yours on, which was very, very nice. Not the best deck around, let's be completely clear, but still a very, very nice option, and one that a few players did all right with. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Not the best set ever in terms of competitive impact. It was not the biggest, baddest set we've ever seen. But it had lots more Delta Pokemon, which was very, very cool. And it was a set that did bring us some very, very good cards. It brought us a deck that went and won the US National Championships undefeated. It brought us that Flygon that was part of a Junior World Championship winning deck. And let's not forget the Holon Adventurer was a staple in a huge amount of decks. It was a decent set, but I think in terms of numbers here, it was beaten by some of the other ones we've seen. But now it's over to you, lovely ladies and gentlemen. I want to know what you thought about this set. I want to know your memories of this set. I want to know what you want to tell me. So go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.